For most of the 20th century, Sears was not just a retailer, it was one of the safest and most trusted institutions in America. It was not exciting, it was not fashionable, but it was permanent. Families built their lives around it, employees spent entire careers inside it, and investors treated it as something that simply could not disappear. And that is what makes what happened next so difficult to accept. Despite a century of dominance, unmatched brand trust, and resources that modern retailers could only dream of, Sears did not slowly fade into irrelevance. It collapsed under its own management, closing thousands of stores and erasing tens of thousands of jobs along the way. This is not a story about Amazon killing another legacy brand. It is not a story about technology moving too fast. And it is not a story about careless leadership or obvious incompetence. What happened to Sears is far more disturbing than that. This is the story of how a company that believed it was being managed rationally, efficiently, and intelligently was quietly dismantled from the inside, not by greed or neglect, but by a philosophy that treated a living retail business as nothing more than a collection of financial assets. This is the story of how Sears didn't just fail, it was dismantled. To understand how catastrophic Sears' fall really was, you need to understand what it once represented. Long before Amazon, long before Walmart, long before shopping malls even existed, Sears had already solved the hardest problem in retail: how to reach every customer, everywhere, regardless of geography. Founded in the late 19th century, Sears built the first truly national retail network in American history. Its catalog connected rural families to the industrial economy, offering access to goods that were previously unreachable. Clothing, tools, appliances, furniture, and entire houses were all delivered through a system that was decades ahead of its time. By the middle of the 20th century, Sears became the largest retailer in the world. It pioneered modern logistics, mastered inventory management and distribution at a scale no one had seen before, and created private labels like Kenmore, Craftsman, and Die Hard that became symbols of durability and trust. Sears was not just selling products, it was selling reliability. If America needed something, Sears found a way to deliver it. In many ways, Sears was Amazon, just operating with paper catalogs and railroads instead of servers and delivery vans. By the 1980s and 1990s, Sears appeared untouchable. It owned massive amounts of real estate, anchored shopping malls across the country, and enjoyed brand loyalty built over generations. For executives, Sears felt permanent, like a company that simply could not fail. But retail was changing quietly and relentlessly. Walmart was perfecting ruthless efficiency and price dominance. Specialty retailers were focusing deeply on specific categories and winning customers through clarity and experience. Consumer expectations were evolving faster than legacy systems could adapt. Sears, however, remained comfortable. Stores aged without meaningful reinvestment, layouts stayed frozen in time, and technology lagged behind competitors. Yet the sheer size of the company created a dangerous confidence that Sears could survive on history alone. That confidence would become the foundation of its downfall. What made this moment especially dangerous was that Sears still looked successful on paper. Revenue declined slowly rather than collapsing overnight. And the company's enormous real estate holdings created the illusion of hidden strength. Mall owners depended on Sears as an anchor tenant. Lenders focused on property value instead of retail weakness, and executives mistook survival for health. Inside the company, incentives quietly shifted. Short-term financial performance began to matter more than long-term customer loyalty. Decisions were judged by spreadsheets rather than by how stores actually felt to shoppers walking through the doors. Over time, Sears stopped asking how to win customers and started asking how long the existing system could be stretched before it finally broke. This was the moment when Sears stopped thinking like a retailer and started thinking like a holding company. In the early 2000s, control of Sears shifted into the hands of hedge fund manager Eddie Lampert, a Wall Street prodigy often described as one of the smartest investors of his generation. To financial markets, Lampert looked like the perfect savior. He spoke the language of efficiency, discipline, and value creation. But Lampert did not see Sears as a retailer competing for customers' loyalty. He saw a balance sheet, real estate holdings, brand names, cash flows, and financial assets. This shift in perspective was subtle but devastating. When leadership stops seeing a company as a living business and starts seeing it as a portfolio, decisions begin to prioritize extraction instead of growth. The cultural impact of this shift was immediate. Store managers lost autonomy. Employees felt disconnected from leadership and decision-making, slowed as internal units negotiated against each other instead of working together. The company that once prided itself on operational excellence became fragmented, cautious, and internally competitive in all the wrong ways. Retail requires alignment. Pricing, inventory, staffing, and customer experience must move together. At Sears, those systems began pulling in opposite directions, creating inefficiencies that customers could feel even if they could not clearly explain them. Lampert believed internal competition would unlock value, so Sears was divided into independent internal units that competed against each other for capital and resources. Kenmore fought craftsmen. Merchandising clashed with operations, and collaboration slowly disappeared. At the same time, investment in stores was reduced, maintenance was delayed, technology upgrades were postponed, and employee morale eroded. While Amazon reinvested relentlessly into speed, convenience, and customer experience, Sears moved in the opposite direction. Real estate was sold off. Cash was pulled from operations. Financial engineering replaced retail fundamentals. The irony was brutal. Sears already had logistics networks, customer data, and brand trust long before Amazon built them. But instead of modernizing its future, leadership chose to monetize its past. Sears was not losing a war. It was draining itself of blood. Every year, the gap widened. Competitors refreshed stores, invested in digital infrastructure, and redesigned the shopping experience. Sears stores, by contrast, felt increasingly frozen in time. Lighting grew harsher, fixtures aged, checkout systems slowed, and basic maintenance became inconsistent. This physical decline mattered more than executives realized. Retail is emotional. Customers interpret neglect as disrespect. When stores feel forgotten, shoppers assume the brand has stopped caring. And once that trust is gone, it is almost impossible to win back. By the 2010s, the consequences were impossible to hide. Stores felt empty and neglected, shelves were understocked, and employees were disengaged. Customers noticed immediately and quietly left. Losses mounted, suppliers demanded faster payments, and locations closed one after another. In 2018, Sears filed for bankruptcy, shocking the public not because it failed, but because it had taken so long. This was not a sudden collapse. It was death by installments. What makes the Sears collapse uniquely painful is that it unfolded in slow motion. Employees watched it happen. Customers felt it happening. Analysts warned about it for years. And yet the structure of the company made course correction nearly impossible. By the time the damage was undeniable, the systems that once made Sears great had already been dismantled. Talent had left, culture had eroded, and customer habits had changed. The company that needed bold reinvestment was no longer capable of executing it. Sears did not die because Amazon was stronger. It died because leadership forgot what business it was actually in. Retail is not real estate, and it is not financial assets. Retail is people, stores, experience, and relentless reinvestment. Sears had everything it needed to survive and even dominate the modern era, but it chose to protect the past instead of building the future. And that is what makes this story so tragic, because Sears did not have to fail.